In September 1921, a 23-year-old Iñupiat woman named Ada Blackjack boarded a ship bound for one of the most remote, uninhabited islands on Earth. She had no wilderness training, no hunting experience, no reason to be there at all, except one. Her 5-year-old son was sick, and she needed the money to save him. The expedition was the idea of an explorer named Vilhjalmur Stephenson, who believed Wrangel Island, a frozen, barely mapped landmass in the Arctic Ocean north of Siberia, could be claimed for Canada. He sent 4 young men to live there. Ada was hired only as a seamstress to sew and mend their clothing. She was the only woman, the only Alaska native, and she almost didn't go at all. The first year on Wrangel Island went reasonably well. The team hunted, built shelter, and waited for a supply ship that was supposed to arrive the following summer. But the Arctic ice did not cooperate. The ship never came. Food supplies that were meant to last a year now had to stretch far beyond it, and the group's situation grew steadily more desperate. By January 1923, the 4 men made a decision. 3 of them, Lorne Knight, Fred Maurer, and Milton Gall, would attempt to cross the frozen sea to Siberia for help, walking across pack ice for hundreds of miles. The 4th, a man named Lorne Knight, was too weak from scurvy to travel. He stayed behind, with Ada as his only companion. The 3 men who set out across the ice were never seen again. To this day, no one knows what happened to them. Ada Blackjack did not know this yet. She simply knew that the men who left had not come back, and that the man she was caring for was getting sicker every single day. Ada had never fired a rifle, had never built an Arctic shelter alone, had never hunted seals or foxes for food. Everything she needed to know to survive, she now had to learn, while simultaneously nursing a dying man in one of the most hostile environments on the planet, utterly alone. Neuroscientists studying extreme caregiving under survival stress describe a specific psychological phenomenon. When a person's own survival becomes entangled with someone else's care, the brain often produces extraordinary reserves of endurance it would not otherwise access. Responsibility, it turns out, can be a more powerful motivator than self-preservation alone. Ada taught herself to set traps. She taught herself to shoot a rifle by trial and error, wasting precious ammunition until she understood the mechanics. She built and rebuilt shelter as the weather destroyed it. Every skill she now possessed, she had built from nothing, under conditions that would break most trained survivalists. In June 1923, Lorne Knight died of scurvy. Ada had nursed him for months, cooking for him, hunting for him, comforting him as his body failed. When he finally passed, Ada Blackjack was completely alone on Wrangel Island. No radio, no way to signal the outside world, no idea if anyone was even still looking for the expedition. What followed was 2 months of complete solitude in the Arctic. She built a shelter that could withstand polar bear attacks. She kept a diary, not for anyone else, but to preserve her own sense of time, her own sense of self. Psychologists studying isolation call this narrative anchoring. Telling your own story keeps identity from dissolving into nothing. She hunted seals from a kayak she had never operated before teaching herself. She fended off a polar bear that approached her camp. She rationed the little food she had with the same discipline that had kept the entire original expedition alive for as long as it had lasted. Every single day was its own separate act of survival. On August 20th, 1923, nearly 2 years after she first arrived on Wrangel Island, a ship appeared on the horizon. It was a rescue vessel, funded partly by Fred Maurer's family, searching for any survivors of the ill-fated expedition. What the crew found was almost beyond belief. They found Ada Blackjack, alive, healthy, self-sufficient. She had survived nearly 2 years in one of the most unforgiving environments on Earth, teaching herself to hunt, trap, navigate, and endure after being sent there with no relevant training at all for a wage she needed to save her son's life. When she returned home, the story that reached the newspapers focused on the men who died and the ambitious expedition that failed. Ada Blackjack was paid only a fraction of what she was promised. She was largely written out of her own survival story for decades, remembered, when remembered at all, as a footnote to someone else's disaster. Ada used what she earned to pay for her son's tuberculosis treatment, the very reason she had gone to the Arctic in the first place. She lived to 85 years old. What kept her alive on Wrangel Island wasn't training or equipment or expertise. It was a mother's refusal to let her son die without her, even if it meant she had to survive the Arctic completely alone. That's last chance survival.